It's turn 2 of Leningrad from Decision Games. First up, the Germans, and we start with the German replacement phase. They've not got any, well, they have got one division that is reduced, but he's not in position to be replaced or use replacements, so we skip on to the movement phase. And the Germans have got a bit of a challenge. They didn't, no, their attack on the border didn't really go as they hoped, although they have wiped out most of the initial Soviet units. The real problem is these two corps-sized units here, both of which have got strong defence values. They need to be eliminated before we can move on, and that's going to slow us down. Normally I would be aiming to attack Riga in this turn, but this is when the supply rules would stop us. So I can reach there. The army unit has enough movement factors to get to here, and I could get the infantry up onto these as well. But the problem would then come when they attack. The way the supply works in Leningrad is that you determine it at the start of your movement. If you're out of supply, your movement's halved, and then when you announce combat, and you've got 5 movement points to trace to a road that leads you back to your supply source. So if my armour corps was here, but these were still here, you can't go through zone of control, so they'd be forced up this way. That'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just one short. It'd be the same for those. So they'd all be out of supply, get a negative shift, and that would ruin the combat. And also, we don't deal with these. The worst case would be they would block behind the lines. So we're going to have to deal with them, and because they're pretty major units, it's actually going to take the entire Army Group North to do this. So we're going to loop this around here, move these up to bases, totally surround these, and hopefully get high odds and eliminate them once and for all. I'll need to block these, and what we also have coming on is the Germans' only real major reinforcements, 5 infantry divisions, who will go up and try and eliminate this unit. It's probably overkill, but I just want that done, so we'll go all out, and then they can join the assault on Riga next time round. So what I'm going to do is pause the camera, remove the units, and just show you how that works out. So that's the end of the German movement phase, and fairly obvious what we've done. We've completely surrounded and thrown the kitchen sink at the 2 units here. I couldn't quite close the gap. The zones of control that were thrown out by here meant the army unit couldn't have moved directly from one to another, but we've got the strongest infantry corps assisting the 56th to throw the attack in there, and then the 41st is supported by 3 standard infantry corps, 3 divisions each. One thing, just the way I've done it to help myself, is if a stack is all 6s, I've just put a 6 on top. If it contains a unit that's different, I'll put that on top so I can remind myself, so I can check. It's calculating the odds easier. We've got 1 weakened division over here, so we've surrounded the that unit there, and I've just put a blocking unit here because I don't want these suddenly trying to get behind us and look that out. I don't think I'll do an attack here. I'll wait until next time. So that's at the end of movement. We've got 3 attacks to do. I'll just calculate the odds and then come back and we can see the results. Right, well, the first attack turned out to be a bit of a overkill. This is some of the fun you can get with the untried units. He's got a grand defence and or attack value of 1. So we have a 29 to 1. Reduced to a 10 to 1, as that's the maximum. No need to roll a dice. It's either to retreat, which any can't retreat, or eliminated, so he is out. And no point in occupying, so we'll leave those as it is. We've got 2 attacks to come in down here, one of which is going to be supported by the Luftwaffe. So here we've got exactly 72 to 12, which goes to a 6 to 1, and then we have a number of factors that improve that. The armour, so that would knock it down to a 5 to 1. That's cancelled out by the air, so that's back up to a 6 to 1. We then have armour here, 7 to 1, core 8 to 1, and then these are out of supply, so that's 2 warships, 10 to 1. So anything bar a 1 is a total elimination. A 1, nope, it's a 2. A 1 would have been 2 units eliminated, which would have been a real pain because they would have held the rest in zones of control. So I'm going to keep that one armour as it's got it. Actually, no, what we're doing, they're all eliminated. They're eliminated and it's used up. And this, irritatingly, is an 83 to 14. 1 point short, but there wasn't a point to be had. Couldn't squeeze another one in there with the need to get these extra cores down to attack here, which comes down to a 5 to 1. There's no armour in this stack though, so we've got armour bonus, core bonus, and 2 for out of supply, makes that up to a 9 to 1. So again, we want to get more than a 3. If you're the Germans, we get a 1. That is a real pain. 1 is 2, or we can't retreat, but we can take the 2 losses if we're the Russians, and we'll keep that 7 in there. That's going to exert the zone of control and slow down those Germans, and that's why I put the air on here, was if anything I need to get something moving for an attack up here. So I can at least free these guys up to get up and to get an attack. Now you might be saying, hang on, with him there, how could I still be in supply? But your own units negate enemy zones of control for supply. So as long as I keep some units here, I can come down this road and move through my units back out. So that's going to certainly going to help. I have an attack down here, as I say, because I don't want any nasty surprises that cause me to retreat. So that's the end of a almost entirely successful German attack. We've used up our air, so there's no interdiction. On to the Russians. It's the Russian half of turn 2, and I've started this in the eastern side by Leningrad. I wanted to show how we're going to move the units up to build the next line of defence. So I've been playing this game I don't know how many times now. I've never noticed that actually there is a compass rose there, so actually north is more up here, so I can use east and west pretty well. I can't believe I played the game so many times and not even noticed that. So these are more or less coming in from the east or east, northeast, something like that. Okay, so next priority for the Russians is to build this line in here and then move up the new replacements, so they start getting substantial replacements from now on. No fort, so we don't do any fort building this turn. That comes from next turn. So let's move these guys up. So we've got 2 there. We need to really look about making sure we can get as much zones of control out here. So we're going to move up and man this line. We're going to move this up to support, and you'll see some reinforcements coming on from over here. So let's do that and come back in a moment. So that's the end of Russian movement. We had 3 infantry divisions and a mechanised division come on. So the infantry divisions have only made it as far as Leningrad, but the advantage of the mechanised having that half point on the road is and they've actually leapt ahead of the division coming up from Kingsip. These 2 are hopefully going to take up positions around here, so once the inevitable breakthrough from Riga comes, we can slow it up there. These actually are positioned to either go down either road, depending on what happens next. Along the Dvina, obviously got holding Riga, holding the bend here, so we've got nice zones of control. I've moved unit over the river. It's going to be vulnerable, but it stops Dvinsk being attacked by 3 different hexes. So that is there. Just for completeness, there's been no movement along here because they can't. To disengage, you need to leave a unit behind. So if you're on your own, you can't disengage. So there have been 2 units there. I could have pulled one off here. It would have been cost terrain plus 3 for an infantry unit, but as there's only 1, it's held and stuck. Same with this here, but he, to be honest, he doesn't want to move. He's quite happy sacrificing himself. Well, happy is probably the wrong word for the poor souls of the actual division, but from a gaming point of view, he's doing a great job tying down and going to slow down everything that's next to him. So that's the end of the Russian turn. Combat is voluntary, and neither of these units are going to commit suicide by trying to actually launch any attack. So we finish that, move on to turn 3. So it's turn 3 of Leningrad from Decision Games, and the German half of the turn. No replacement to deal with in the replacement phase, so straight on to movement, and we need to try and move forward whilst dealing with the effects of this unit here, which is going to slow us down, but we can still make initial attacks both on Riga and down by Dvinsk. This was a nice illustration of the effect of the zones of control and the disengagement rule, so I'm actually going to just work this one through just to illustrate the impact of this. So 56th Panzer Corps, Mechanized Corps, is free, so that can actually just move straight up. So 1, 2, 3 into there, but unfortunately no further. It actually has got movement points to move across to here, but it can't move, can't disengage from one zone of control into another, so we're held there. This needs to disengage, so for normal infantry units they can only disengage from the zone of control they start in, and you have to leave a unit behind, and it costs you 3 extra movement points, so it does slow you down. So we can move these 2 8s, 1 plus 3 is 4, 5 across to there. Fortunately these units from the top here are free, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can move this other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll tidy that up for the attack later. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Holding him back. One thing you've got to be careful of is not crowding your units, because if you do get an adverse result in a retreat, if this was all stacked with 3s, you couldn't retreat. So you need to keep your reserves close, but not too close. And then for these, you have to disengage before you can come back. So this one can move 2 units forward, so at least get a little 1 hex forward. So you can move 2 out, so that's 2 for the woods, plus 3 is 5, but then you can move back in for the 6th movement point, just to make sure I've got enough forces here, and I can do the similar with these. So these are going to break off and attack down here, so I'll quickly tidy that up and then we'll come back for combat. So that's the end of movement. As I said, we've moved 40 First Corps and this infantry corps down to attack here. The limit of their movement, they managed to get through the woods and away. He's just moved up to make sure this can't try and get round there. Shepherd him if he does get a retreat. And these are just disengaged and move around, so he's still surrounded, but we've moved a little bit forward, but it does show the effect of the slowing there. So we've got 4 attacks to make. I'll just calculate the odds and then we'll come back and see how they go. Right, we've let's see the attacks. So we've got a total of 69 factors against 5 here. So that gives us 13 to 1. That would be reduced down because of the river and because of the city. so makes it still 11 to 1. The armor bonus doesn't count because you're attacking into a non-clear hex, but the core still does, and I put air on this one to make sure. So back up to 13 to 1, 10 to 1, anything but a 1 for the Germans. They get a 3, and that eliminates those units. I'm not going to advance the tanks because actually they're going to pin these for the next go, so I'll get these across the river and move that time. Here, ganging up completely, 60 to 7 and 8 to 1, he's out of supply, makes it a 10 to 1, and the worst that can happen is a 2 retreat, so he finally bites the dust, and you can advance up to 3 into there, so those two will move up. Down here, this division seems to attract strong defenders, so we've actually got 6, so you've got 15, 6, 2 to 1. He's out of supply because now German units or zones of controls completely block this off, which makes it a 4 to 1, but still, he could well be going backwards here. But we've got a 5 at a 4 to 1 is a 1 retreat, so he will retreat 1 to there. They will keep moving up with him, but we're going to have to bring up some reinforcements to finish him off next time round. And then the final here, we've got a 4, that's 50 to 4, 12 to 1 with the armour and the core bonus. Actually makes it 14 to 1, so back on the 10 to 1 column, and a 6, he's eliminated. So we're going to move the armour up because they're going to have a chance to surround those units, but there is a potential way out for some of them. So reasonably successful, but I think we're getting a bit behind schedule from the Germans' point of view. There's no interdiction. We've used our unit again. I never really use it for interdiction that much. Maybe missing a trick. It'd be interesting to see people who played this, maybe a bit more than I have, whether they use that more. But I've at least cracked the Divina River, or got a bridgehead over. I think they actually did that in the historical equivalent of turn 1 in reality. So not quite up with history here. But let's forget about that and move on to the Russian turn. Starting the Russian portion of turn 3 here, and we're looking at the east. We've got some forts to place this time around, 2 forts. From now through to turn 8 we get 2 forts per turn to, I suppose, indicate the massive effort the Russians made to sort of build up the defences around Leningrad as they knew the Germans were approaching. The forts basically give you an extra column shift and also slow the Germans down if they have to move through one to destroy it and affect their tracing supply, so they're quite important. Basically you can place them in any hex 4 from this one here, the back of Leningrad, but it must be able to trace the supply to there. It can't be in a German zone of control, although if you've got a unit there, that unit negates it. So we need to create an outer ring and then save the last 4 forts for Leningrad itself. So I typically 1, 2, 3, 4 start building them there and keeping them far out, 1, 2, 3, 4, so we can eventually populate these with units, but at the moment we need to move some forward to stop the Germans. We get 1 armoured unit. It's actually a proper armoured unit this turn, and I think it's going to, it comes on here, I think it's going to follow these units down because the defences around Riga are looking pretty thin. So what we need to do is try and build a screen here to slow these down, get some zones of control, move this out, see if we can extricate at least one of these units to slow things down a little bit. So I will do that. I've also got these units to move up, which again I think are going to move down support this line this way. It all looks a bit thin at the this time for the Russians, but the divisions keep coming thick and fast. So let's do that and come back after that movement. So that's the end of Russian movement. Along the Divina, I've pulled one unit back out, moved up here to sort of spread the line. It also forces this unit to either, if it's going to pull back, it's going to have to pull around here, and actually that means it can only get that far, so that will slow it down. Both of these have lines of retreat. We had to leave one behind because you can't disengage and completely clear the hex. Same here, move this one up to there to try and therefore build a zone of control wall with this mechanised unit that moved up. He's moving up there to be the next line. The eagle-eyed of you might have noticed actually I flipped that. He was sitting there with his values, the replacement, so I chucked him back in with the rest and mixed it around again, so I don't know. He's moving down here to hold up Pskov because I was concerned that the 3 units weren't going to get there in time, so I've sent 1 division this way, 2 divisions down here. I think actually I'll have enough time to build some defences around here as well. I've still got my 1 unit here holding these guys up. He can't move anyway, so that's the end of the Russian movement. They don't want to do any combat. They rarely do. It's must be a frustrating game actually playing this if you're just the Russian player, but it works out really well, Solitaire. Very little Russian combat other than maybe around turn 8 or so. And also there's some units that come on sort of, it's off map, potentially come on down here sort of around turns 5, 6, 7. That represents a counterattack at Saltsea, which I think is about here, which they did, which actually held up the Germans for a couple of weeks, so we'll have to consider that when we're the Russians. But that's the end of their turn 3, and on to turn 4.